Who doesn't love a good sample? When it comes to making Vaporwave, implementing and exploring the internet for samples to chop up has become a practice sacred to the very sport of aesthetics itself. Hunting down obscurity within the depths of the YouTube related section, converting that song you like to an MP3 or WAV file, then going in on it to make it your own, only further pronounce this very mystique attitude of the Vaporwave way of life, a forgotten, mysterious, lost glamour that you happen to stumble upon within the crevices of the cyber world. However, the ways of musical production did not stay solidified in a state purely dependent on sample engineering for very long, especially in the beginning of Vaporwave when all we really saw was the bending of samples. Even by late 2012, producers began introducing their own instrumentals to create a palette less sample dense, all while still trying to ooze this feeling of false technological hope, forgotten media, and nostalgic undertones. An immediate example that comes to mind is Blank Banshee's beloved Blank Banshee Zero, the classic pound-for-pound champion of the Vapor Trap division that played off of trending vibes existing in that current meta of Vaporwave, all while at the same time adding in something odd, intricate, and organic to the movement with cleverly placed 808s and synths sounding like they were sprouted from the soil of one's strangest dreams. Nowadays, it's pretty safe to say we have seen it all. A prism stretched far and wide, blessed with all sorts of production methods, sample chopping, field recordings, live instruments, vocals, you name it, we've pretty much heard it. So this big discussion seems to come up time and time again in the community, this battle between sampling versus non-sampling and which one is better, right? Especially in this day and age with the growth of the scene and everyone craving something new. Is it really impossible to abandon the tried and true ways of the sample bender, or should we really move on for the sake of newness and fresh creativity? But does that also deteriorate the whole concept of Vaporwave itself? Well, with this video, I want to not necessarily search for an answer on which one is better, but more so on how each one contributes to the scene in its own unique way. Boring answer, lame answer, I know. But listen, to be honest with you, I believe the discussion should be based less on competitive assets and more so on how each one enhances the Vaporwave genre, all while not going overboard in its own way. If you want to see this video in written form, I have written an article on this topic on Vapor 95. I'm gonna link the article in the description below. Also check them out, they got a ton of cool Vaporwave merch, they got news, they got articles. It's popping over there, go check them out. And as always, please throw a like on this video, and if it's your first time here, subscribe. I make Vaporwave videos all the time. Y'all know the deal, so let's just get on with the video. So let's start off with sampling, all right? Good old sampling. I mean, come on, like I said, who doesn't love a nicely chopped, creatively filtered, and perfectly placed sample to coat your soul with something fun and catchy? Who doesn't enjoy that little rewarding surprise after hearing a Vectroid track, let's say, and then hearing the original sample used to make that song pop up on your radio only a couple days later? Sampling from existing songs is always ironically convenient in a narrative sense of the whole Vaporwave idea. This fact that it can replicate this bootleg acquisition within the flow of your track. Using samples to create musical stories, artists can pump out projects and albums at a consistently convenient rate. A good amount of work is already done for you, especially when you found that super delicious little loop in a track that is ripe with instrumentals and vocals you do not need to put in yourself. All of this further contributes to this melting pot surplus of Vaporwave tracks that already exist on the internet and will always allow for more music to be pumped out at an extremely rapid rate. Who doesn't love getting lost in the back catalog of Cat System Corp's earlier works, or taking a mini vacation through the skyscrapers of luxury elite? And a lot of us love Vaporwave for that. I know I have and always have. There's this engraved notion of availability all the time, getting lost within the hundreds of Bandcamp pages that are tagged Vaporwave, always knowing we'll never be able to listen to it all. There's so much shit out there, and most of those uploads will contain samples. Simply put, it is obvious how important the act or practice of using samples are to the genre's core and to keep the mechanism going. The flaw in this, though, is that there will be a lot of Vaporwave material put online that many can find lazy, uninspired, and repetitious. Personally, I'll always find the cheap, lazy side of Vaporwave fun. I think it's all part of the experience, but understandably for many, you may want to hear more than a haunting sample chop, you know? And with this issue, implementing some real raw and organic production can set you apart from a good majority of the competition. I always like to think of sample-based Vaporwave as Adobe Photoshop, alright, and non-sample-based Vaporwave as Adobe Illustrator. For those who aren't familiar with the two softwares I just listed, Photoshop is used to edit already existing images that can't be enlarged or you'll get them all blurry, right? While Illustrator, on the other hand, is used to construct vectors and shapes that can be enlarged and or shrunk without losing resolution, and you can do that infinitely. So traditionally, as a graphic designer or anyone using the program, one would create in Illustrator and then edit in Photoshop. You don't use one over the other, but instead you use both together in the entire creation process. And this is why I see sample and non-sample based Vaporwave as more of teammates and less as competitors. There is an open door towards newness, all while retaining that signature Vaporwave feel, never losing sight of this longing for the past that was hopeful for the future to come. One can start with a blank canvas, produce their own material, and then glaze it with a sample to add an exciting variety or counter melody to what one has created themselves. And then if you still think, the track is a bit empty sounding or can use some more structure, create some more organic production and continually pair it back up with what you have made so far. A back and forth concoction that could end up creating a final product way more dense, diverse, and wholesome than just using a sample or just making your own, produced material. Many believe that completely stripping samples or just not having the genre be super surrounded by them, it goes against the very heart, blood, and soul of the genre's original roots. And a concern one may have with going strictly non-sample based is that it makes the track lose that obvious Vaporwave charm, that undeniably dusty aura that sometimes you can only really get coming out of using an old sample in your track. And don't get me wrong, there are producers out there who do a great job at making their stuff sound vintage and like lost media-esque, but at the same time, if you don't, use a sample, you kind of don't get that feeling. Sometimes when something is too organic, it does not deliver that same smoky punch as, let's say, an old 80s R&B sample slowed down. This is why I think it's just more practical as a producer these days in the scene, especially if you want to stick out, to try your hand at using both. Take a shot, take a chance, and try and hit both sides of the spectrum. And it is so nice to see many coming around to the idea of non-sample Vaporwave. And it's not like this is only just happening now. People have been doing this for years within the scene, but nowadays I feel like it's more than ever. Artists have been realizing the refreshing experience for themselves to just craft something that is their own or just work with the two. Windows 96, Dan Mason, FM Skyline, and Runners Club 95, that Panama Papers, shit is poppin', baby, poppin'. Just a small handful of artists this year that have put out some very notable work, heavy with their own formula, and it absolutely bangs. So yeah, I really have no answer, and I don't even want to have an answer on if, one is better than the other, because to me, I think the possibilities are endless with creative fun if you just use both together. Just work on them together. But I want to hear what you think too. Let me know your thoughts on the whole idea of sampling versus non-sampling in Vaporwave. Is not using samples just going against what Vaporwave is and just doesn't make the track Vaporwave? Or do we need newness? Do we need it? At a time now where the genre is just growing and changing and morphing more than it's ever done before. 2019 has been crazy. It is totally cool to prefer one over the other. We all have our own feelings. But when we can see the two as best of friends, I personally believe the possibility for newness and excitement is endlessly legendary. Much love, your boy, Pad Chennington.